I visited my widowed Apache neighbor. As night fell, then I gently removed her shoes and shirt. The sun had just begun to dip behind the distant hills, casting long golden shadows across the quiet neighborhood. Tanvir, a young man with a calm and thoughtful nature, was finishing the last of his daily chores. He had always been friendly and polite to the people around him, but lately he had noticed that his neighbor, Mrs. Apache, seemed more alone than ever. She had lived in that small, modest house for many years, and after losing her husband a few years back, her life had become quiet and lonely. Most people in the neighborhood gave her polite nods or brief hellos, but Tanvir had always felt that she deserved more than that. She deserved a friend, someone who could offer her comfort and company. That evening, Tanvir decided to pay her a visit. He walked slowly down the dusty path that led to her house, enjoying the gentle breeze that carried the scent of the wildflowers blooming near the fence. He could hear the soft chirping of birds settling in for the night, and the distant sound of children playing further down the street. There was a calmness in the air, a quiet reminder that even ordinary evenings could hold small, meaningful moments, if one paid attention.
When he reached her house, Tanvir noticed that the wooden door was slightly ajar. He knocked gently, calling out, "Good evening, Mrs.
Apache. I hope I'm not disturbing you." The door creaked open, and she appeared in the doorway. She was a petite woman with kind eyes that seemed to have witnessed both joy and sorrow in her long life. Her hair, streaked with silver, was pulled back neatly, and she wore a simple dress that looked both comfortable and well cared for. "Oh, Tanvir," she said softly, a smile forming on her face. "It's so good to see you. Please, come in." Bust. He stepped inside her home, noticing the warmth and coziness that her little living space offered. Though modest, the house was clean and carefully arranged, with small mementos of her life spread across the shelves. Photographs of family members, handmade crafts, and a few potted plants that seemed to thrive under her care. The faint smell of herbs and home-cooked food lingered in the air, making the space feel lived in and welcoming. They sat together in the small living room, and Tanvir began a simple conversation, asking about her day and how she had been feeling lately. Mrs. Apache spoke with a quiet grace, sharing memories of her husband, of happier times, and of small challenges she faced living alone. Tanvir listened attentively, offering sympathetic words and nods of understanding. He realized that sometimes what people needed most was not advice or solutions, but simply someone who could listen without judgment. After a while, Mrs. Apache mentioned that she had been feeling a little tired from gardening that afternoon. Tanvir offered to help her with some of the chores around the house, and she accepted graciously. They went together to water the plants and sweep the small porch. As they worked side by side, the silence between them was comfortable, not awkward. There was a sense of companionship in their shared tasks, a subtle understanding that friendship was being built in small, meaningful ways. The evening slowly wore on, and the sky outside shifted from gold to deep orange, then to soft shades of purple and blue. Tanvir noticed that the shadows in the room were growing longer and the air cooler, signaling that night was approaching. He helped Mrs. Apache prepare a simple tea, pouring steaming water into small cups and adding just a touch of honey. They sat at the kitchen table sipping their tea and sharing stories from their past. Mrs. Servants Apache spoke of her childhood in the countryside, of traditions that had been passed down through generations, and of the love she had for music and dance. Tanvir shared his own experiences growing up, the adventures he had taken with friends, and the lessons he had learned along the way. As the conversation continued, Tanvir realized that the bond between them was growing stronger. It was the kind of friendship that did not need grand gestures or extravagant words. It was quiet, steady, and filled with genuine care. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction in knowing that his visit had brightened her evening, even just a little. Before leaving, Tanvir helped Mrs. Safa. Apache tidy up the kitchen and put things back in order. She thanked him warmly, her eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and relief. Tanvir, it means a lot to have someone visit, she said softly. It's been a long time since I've had company like this. He smiled, feeling a sense of happiness that came from doing something meaningful. It's my pleasure, Mrs. Apache. I enjoy spending time with you. Let's make it a habit, shall we? She nodded, smiling. I would like that very much. As he stepped back outside, the cool night air greeted him, carrying with it the scent of jasmine and fresh earth. The stars were beginning to twinkle in the clear sky above, and he felt a quiet peace settle over him. Walking back to his own home, Tanvir reflected on the simple joys of human connection, the way a small act of kindness could bridge the gap between loneliness and companionship. That night, as he lay in bed, he thought about the stories Mrs. Apache had shared and the laughter they had exchanged. He realized that life was full of unexpected moments of friendship, moments that could happen if one only took the time to notice and reach out. And in that realization, he found a sense of purpose, a commitment to continue nurturing the bonds that made life rich and meaningful. One visit, one conversation, and one shared cup of tea at a time. The evening had started like any other, with the ordinary rhythm of daily life, but it ended with a quiet warmth that lingered in both their hearts. It was a reminder that compassion and understanding were gifts that could be given freely without expectation, and that sometimes the simplest gestures could have the deepest impact. Tanvir knew that this was only the beginning of a friendship that would grow slowly, steadily, and beautifully, bringing light to both their lives in ways that neither of them could have anticipated. The next morning the sun rose slowly over the neighborhood, painting the sky with soft hues of pink and orange. Tanvir woke up feeling refreshed and thoughtful, thinking about his visit to Mrs. Chuut, Apache, the night before. There was a quiet joy that lingered in his heart, a sense of fulfillment that came from simply being present with someone who needed company. He decided that today he would pay her another visit, not because he had any obligation, but because he genuinely wanted to see her smile again. After finishing his morning routine, Tanvir packed a small basket with a few items he thought Mrs. Apache might enjoy. Some freshly baked bread from the local bakery, a jar of honey, and a small bunch of wildflowers he had picked from a nearby field. The flowers were a mix of colors, bright yellows, soft purples, and delicate whites, and their scent was light but sweet. He hoped they would bring a little cheer to her morning. Walking down the familiar path to her house, Tanvir felt a sense of anticipation. He wasn't sure what the day would hold, but he knew that sharing even simple moments could make a difference. When he arrived, Mrs. Apache was already outside tending to her small garden. Her hands were gentle as she carefully pruned the leaves and watered the flowers, and the sunlight danced across her hair, giving it a golden glow. "Good morning, Mrs. Apache," Tanvir greeted warmly. "I brought you something."
Her eyes lit up as she noticed the basket.
"Oh, Tanvir, you didn't have to," she said, her voice soft but filled with genuine happiness. "But it's very thoughtful of you." "Thank you."
They sat together on the small wooden bench near the garden, and Tanvir offered her the bread and honey.
She tasted it with a delighted smile and took a deep breath of the fresh morning air. "This is wonderful," she said. "You always know how to make someone feel cared for." They began talking about the garden. Mrs. Apache shared stories about how she had learned to care for plants from her father, who had a small farm in the countryside. She spoke of the joy she felt when a new flower bloomed or when vegetables grew healthy and strong. Tanvir listened attentively, fascinated by her knowledge and the love she had for her plants. He even offered to help her with some gardening tasks, and she gladly accepted. Together, they planted new seeds, carefully digging small holes in the soil and covering them with earth. Tanvir learned how to arrange the plants so that each one received enough sunlight and water.
And Mrs.
Apache explained the importance of patience and consistency in caring for a garden. As they worked side by side, the bond between them grew stronger. There was laughter when a stubborn weed refused to come out, and quiet satisfaction when a row of seeds was neatly planted. After the gardening, they moved inside for a light lunch. Mrs. Apache prepared a simple vegetable soup while Tanvir helped set the table. The aroma of the soup filled the kitchen, and they shared a meal that was both nourishing and comforting. As they ate, they talked about their favorite foods, childhood memories, and small dreams for the future. Tanvir found himself learning not only about Mrs. Strawball's Apache's life, but also about resilience, kindness, and the simple pleasures that made life meaningful. In the afternoon, Tanvir suggested they take a short walk around the neighborhood. The streets were quiet, with only the occasional sound of a dog barking or a distant car passing by. They walked slowly, enjoying the gentle warmth of the sun and the feeling of fresh air on their faces. Mrs. Apache pointed out small details she loved: the pattern of clouds in the sky, the colors of flowers growing along the roadside, and the birds perched on the fence posts. Tanvir realized that she had a way of noticing beauty in everyday life, and it made him appreciate the world around him more deeply. As they walked, they encountered some neighbors who greeted them cheerfully. Mrs. Apache introduced Tanvir, explaining that he had been a kind and thoughtful visitor. Tanvir felt a sense of pride, not in himself, but in the trust and friendship that had grown between them. People stopped to chat briefly, and he noticed how Mrs. Wells, Apache's demeanor had changed over the years. There was a spark of happiness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Returning to her house, they spent the rest of the afternoon playing small games and solving puzzles. Tanvir had brought a few brain teasers, and Mrs. Apache enjoyed the challenge, laughing when she got an answer wrong and celebrating when she solved one correctly. They shared stories, memories, and little jokes, discovering that friendship was not just about serious conversations, but also about joy, laughter, and the pleasure of each other's company. As evening approached, Tanvir helped Mrs. Apache prepare a light snack of fruit and tea. They sat by the window watching the sun slowly set behind the hills, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood. The sky turned from soft pinks and purples to deep blues, and the first stars began to appear. They talked quietly about the beauty of nature, the passing of time, and the importance of cherishing each day.
Before leaving, Tanvir offered to help Mrs.
Apache with some small household tasks she had been postponing. She accepted, and together they cleaned a few rooms, organized shelves, and tidied up the living space. It was not work that needed to be done out of necessity alone. It was a shared activity that strengthened their bond. Mrs. Apache expressed her gratitude, saying, "Tanvir, it feels so good to have someone help me, and even more to have someone to share the day with." Tanvir smiled, feeling a warm glow inside. "I enjoy it as much as you do," he replied. "Spending time with you has taught me many things, and I feel lucky to have these moments together." That night, as Tanvir walked home, the streetlights cast long shadows on the pavement, and the gentle hum of the evening surrounded him. He reflected on the day and realized how much he had learned from Mrs. Apache. Not just about gardening, cooking, or life in general, but about patience, kindness, and the quiet power of genuine friendship. He understood that small acts of care, shared time, and attentive listening could transform loneliness into companionship and sorrow into subtle joy. He arrived home with a feeling of contentment and thought about the days to come. He knew that he wanted to continue visiting Mrs. Apache, learning from her stories, sharing in her laughter, and supporting her in any way he could. Life, he realized, was not just about grand adventures or remarkable achievements. It was about the small, consistent moments of care, the gentle presence one offered another, and the trust and connection that grew quietly over time. Before going to bed, Tanvir wrote a few notes in his journal about the day, the conversations, the laughter, the lessons learned, and the small joys they had shared. He reflected on how much the world could change for someone simply by offering attention, care, and friendship. It felt a renewed sense of purpose and a deep appreciation for the bonds that made life meaningful. And so, part 2 of their story ended with quiet satisfaction and a promise of more shared days to come. The simple routines of gardening, cooking, walking, and talking had created a strong foundation for a friendship that was slowly blossoming. Tanvir knew that these moments, though ordinary on the surface, were extraordinary in their depth and significance. The evening faded into night, leaving a gentle warmth in their hearts, and the certainty that kindness, patience, and companionship could create lasting joy in the lives of those who opened themselves to it. The following morning, the sun rose slowly over the neighborhood, casting a soft golden light across the streets and houses. Tanvir woke with a sense of purpose. He felt that his visits to Mrs. Apache were becoming more than casual calls. They were now a meaningful part of both their lives. Today, he thought, he would bring a little surprise, something to make her day even more special. After breakfast, he prepared a small basket filled with ingredients to make a fruit salad. We included apples, bananas, oranges, and a few berries he had picked from the market the day before. Along with it, he packed a small notebook and a set of colored pencils, thinking it might be enjoyable for Mrs. Apache to draw or write in the afternoon. Tanvir had noticed how much she loved sharing memories, and he thought creating little sketches or writing notes could be a fun activity for them to enjoy together.
Walking to her house, he felt a familiar excitement.
There was a sense of warmth and anticipation in his heart, the kind that comes from knowing you are about to spend time with someone you care about. When he arrived, he saw Mrs. Praised, happy, tending her garden once again, her hands carefully watering the plants. She looked up and smiled as soon as she saw him.
"Good morning, Tanvir. You're early today," she said cheerfully.
"Good morning, Mrs. Apache."
I thought we could try something a little different today, Tanvir replied, holding up the basket and the notebook. I brought some ingredients for a fruit salad and some supplies for drawing. I thought we could do both.
"That sounds wonderful. It's been a long time since I did something creative."
I would love that. They went inside and began preparing the fruit salad together.
Tanvir carefully sliced the apples and bananas while Mrs. Apache peeled and sectioned the oranges. They laughed when a piece of fruit slipped from Tanvir's hand and rolled across the counter. The kitchen was filled with the sweet aroma of fresh fruit, and the atmosphere was light and cheerful. As they worked, Mrs. Apache shared stories about how she used to make fruit salads for her family when her husband was alive. She told Tanvir about the little touches she would add, sprinkling a bit of cinnamon on apples or adding a few chopped nuts for texture. Tanvir listened carefully, enjoying the way her eyes sparkled as she recalled these memories. He realized that these stories, filled with both joy and nostalgia, were treasures in themselves, and he felt honored to hear them. Once the fruit salad was ready, they sat together at the small kitchen table and enjoyed their creation. Each bite was sweet and refreshing, and the simple act of sharing food made the morning feel special.
Tanvir noticed that Mrs. Meyer
Patch seemed lighter, her spirits lifted by the attention and companionship. After finishing their snack, they moved to the living room where Tanvir set out the notebook and colored pencils. He encouraged Mrs. Apache to draw something she loved or to write down a memory she cherished.
At first, she hesitated, saying she hadn't drawn in years, but Tanvir's encouragement and gentle humor helped her relax.
Soon she was sketching the flowers from her garden and adding small notes about her favorite moments in life. Tanvir joined in, drawing simple sketches of the sky and the hills surrounding the neighborhood. They laughed at their imperfect drawings and admired the small successes. It wasn't about making perfect art. It was about enjoying the process, sharing a creative space, and expressing themselves freely. Tanvir realized that these small activities had a bigger impact than he could have imagined. They encouraged conversation, reflection, and even a quiet sense of accomplishment. By midday, the sun had risen high, casting a warm light through the windows. Tanvir suggested they take a break and enjoy a short walk outside. They strolled through the quiet streets, talking about the changes they had seen in the neighborhood over the years, the seasons, and the small details that often went unnoticed.
Apache pointed out a bird building a nest in a nearby tree and shared a story about how she used to watch birds with her husband when they were alive. Tanvir listened intently, fascinated by her observations and her ability to find beauty in everyday life.
As they walked, they encountered a small park at the edge of the neighborhood. The park had a few benches, a small playground, and patches of grass dotted with flowers. They decided to sit on a bench and watch the children playing, their laughter echoing through the air. Mrs. Power says,
Apache's eyes softened as she watched them.
It reminds me of when my children were young, she said quietly.
Life seemed simpler then, but every moment was filled with joy.
Tanvir nodded. It's amazing how the smallest moments can leave the biggest memories, he replied.
And it's good to remember them and share them with others. After some time in the park, they returned to her house feeling refreshed from the walk.
Tanvir suggested they continue their creative activity with a new approach, writing short stories based on their favorite memories.
Mrs. Fire seemed so far out of place as that ever sent.
Apache eagerly agreed, and they spent the afternoon crafting small stories. She wrote about childhood adventures, festivals, and family gatherings, while Tanvir wrote about moments of friendship, learning, and small discoveries in life. They shared their stories with each other, laughing and reflecting on the events that had shaped them. As evening approached, Tanvir noticed that the light outside was soft and golden, signaling the end of another day. He helped Mrs. Apache prepare a light dinner, setting the table with simple dishes and ensuring everything was comfortable and ready. They ate together, continuing their conversation about life, memories, and the lessons they had learned along the way. Before leaving, Tanvir offered to help Mrs. the Ride, Apache, with some small household tasks she had been meaning to complete. She accepted, and together they cleaned a few shelves, organized some old photographs, and tidied up the living space. The work was simple, but it was another opportunity for them to connect, share stories, and enjoy each other's company.
Mrs.
Apache thanked Tanvir warmly before he left.
You've brought so much joy into my life, Tanvir.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate your visits, she said, her eyes reflecting gratitude and warmth. Tanvir smiled.
I enjoy it just as much, Mrs. Hart.
Apache.
Spending time with you teaches me so many things, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Walking home under the soft light of the evening, Tanvir reflected on the day. He realized how much he had grown through these simple acts of friendship. He had learned patience, empathy, and the importance of listening deeply. He understood that connection was built not through grand gestures, but through consistent care, shared experiences, and the willingness to be present for someone else. That night, as he lay in bed, Tanvir thought about the stories, laughter, and quiet moments he had shared with Mrs. Apache. He felt a sense of fulfillment that was deeper than anything he had experienced before. These visits had become a source of happiness and learning for both of them, creating a bond that was slowly growing stronger with each passing day. He knew that tomorrow would bring more opportunities, more conversations, more shared activities, and more moments of joy. And he felt grateful for the chance to be part of Mrs. Apache's life, to offer companionship, and to learn from her wisdom. He drifted off to sleep with a peaceful heart, knowing that these simple everyday moments were creating something lasting and meaningful, something that would be remembered long after the days had passed. The next morning, Tanvir woke to the soft light of dawn spilling through his window. He felt a quiet excitement in his heart, knowing that today would be another opportunity to spend time with Mrs. Apache. Their visits had become more than routine. They were a source of joy, reflection, and shared learning. He prepared a small basket once again, this time filled with fresh ingredients for a simple breakfast, some herbal tea, and a few extra treats he thought she might enjoy. As he walked to her house, the neighborhood was coming alive with the sounds of morning. Birds sang from the trees, a gentle breeze rustled through the leaves, and the aroma of baking bread drifted from a nearby house. Tanvir felt a sense of calm and anticipation. He was not only visiting a neighbor, he was visiting a friend, someone who had shared her stories, her wisdom, and her quiet strength with him. When he arrived, Mrs. Apache was already outside, tending her small vegetable patch. She looked up and smiled warmly.
Good morning, Tanvir!
Disco.
I see you brought something again. How kind of you.
Good morning, Mrs. Apache.
I thought we could start the day with something light and fresh, Tanvir replied, holding up the basket. I also thought we could spend some time outdoors, maybe enjoy the morning together in the garden.
That sounds perfect. Let's do it. They went inside and prepared a simple breakfast together. Tanvir washed the vegetables and fruit while Mrs. Apache arranged a small tray with bread, honey, and tea. The kitchen filled with the gentle aroma of fresh fruit and herbs. They ate together, chatting lightly about the day ahead and sharing little memories of mornings from their past. There was a comfortable rhythm to their conversation, a quiet ease that came from trust and mutual respect. After breakfast, they stepped into the garden. The morning sun shone gently, casting long shadows and illuminating the vibrant colors of the flowers and plants. Tanvir helped Mrs. Apache water the plants and prune the overgrown bushes, and she taught him the proper way to care for each type of plant. She explained how sunlight, water, and patience were essential for growth, not just for plants, but for life itself. As they worked, Mrs. Apache shared a story from her youth. She told Tanvir about her first trip into the countryside, the lessons she had learned from her parents, and the challenges she had faced while growing up. Tanvir listened carefully, fascinated by her words and the wisdom they carried. Her stories were not just about the past. They were lessons in resilience, kindness, and perspective. He realized that he had much to learn from her, and he felt grateful for the time they spent together. After tending to the garden, Tanvir suggested they take a short walk to the nearby stream. The path was quiet and shaded, and the sound of flowing water grew louder as they approached. At the stream, they sat on a smooth rock by the edge of the water, dipping their fingers into the cool flow. Tanvir admired the peacefulness of the place, and Mrs. Apache shared memories of how she used to come to similar streams with her family, collecting stones and watching the water ripple over them. They spoke about life, about hopes, and about the simple joys that often went unnoticed. Mrs. Apache encouraged Tanvir to slow down and notice the small details. The glint of sunlight on the water, the sound of leaves rustling, the way a bird paused mid-flight. Tanvir realized that these moments were more than beautiful. They were lessons in mindfulness and appreciation. Returning to her house, they spent the afternoon in creative activity. Mrs. Apache continued her sketches, while Tanvir wrote short reflections about the day. They shared their work with each other, laughing at little mistakes and celebrating small successes. Through these activities, their bond deepened, and they discovered new ways to communicate and connect beyond words. The afternoon passed quickly, filled with learning, joy, and the comfort of shared presence. As evening approached, the sky began to change colors, soft oranges and pinks blending into deep purples.
Tanvir helped Mrs.
Apache prepare a light dinner, arranging a few simple dishes on the table. They ate slowly, savoring the flavors and the warmth of companionship. After dinner, they sat together near the window, watching the sunset. The moment was quiet and reflective, yet filled with unspoken understanding. Mrs. Apache spoke softly. Tanvir, these past days have been so special.
I haven't felt this joy in a long time. You've reminded me of the beauty in ordinary life, and I'm grateful for that.
Tanvir smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. And you've taught me so much, Mrs. Isles, Apache, about patience, kindness, and seeing the beauty in small things.
I feel lucky to have this time with you.
They spent the rest of the evening organizing some of her old photographs. Each picture brought a story, a memory, or a laugh. Mrs. Apache recounted her travels, her family moments, and even the challenges she had overcome. Tanvir listened, amazed at her strength and the richness of her life. He realized that these stories were not just memories. They were lessons, legacies, and a treasure of wisdom. Before leaving, Tanvir helped Mrs. Apache prepare for the night. He ensured her home was tidy and comfortable, and she thanked him warmly.
Tanvir, your visits mean more than I can say. I look forward to them every day, she said, her eyes glistening with genuine gratitude.
Walking home under the starry night sky, Tanvir reflected on the journey of these past days. Their friendship had grown slowly but meaningfully, built on trust, care, and shared experiences. He realized that life's true richness came not from grand achievements or material wealth, but from connections, compassion, and the willingness to invest time in others. That night, he wrote in his journal about the day, the laughter, the conversations, the lessons, and the quiet moments of reflection. He felt a sense of peace, knowing that their friendship had created a ripple of positivity in both their lives. He understood that small, consistent acts of care and attention could transform ordinary days into meaningful memories. As the days passed, Tanvir and Mrs. Apache continued their visits, each day adding layers to their bond. They shared meals, worked in the garden, walked in nature, created art, and exchanged stories. The friendship that had begun with small acts of kindness had grown into a deep and lasting connection, one that brought light to both their lives. Through this journey, Tanvir realized that the greatest gift he could give was presence, being fully attentive, caring, and supportive. And Mrs. Apache in turn showed him the power of resilience, wisdom, and the beauty of a life well lived. Together, they discovered that friendship transcended age, background, and circumstance. It was built on trust, shared experiences, and the quiet joy of simply being there for one another. In the end, the bond they had formed was a reminder that life's most meaningful moments often came from ordinary days, shared activities, and genuine human connection.
Tanvir knew that he had not only brought happiness to Mrs. Apache's life, but had also grown as a person through the experience.
The days they spent together would remain cherished memories, a testament to the enduring power of kindness, care, and friendship. And so, the story concluded not with a grand event or dramatic moment, but with the quiet strength of a bond built over shared mornings, afternoons, and evenings. Tanvir and Mrs. Apache had discovered the extraordinary in the ordinary, the beauty in simple companionship, and the joy of a friendship that would endure long after the days passed.